Hi, I'm Duncan from Passionate About Fish, and in this video we're going to show you how to prepare a lobster. This lobster is actually a Canadian Nova Scotian lobster. It was flown in fresh live. We placed the lobster in damp newspaper in the freezer for half an hour to put him into a hibernatory state, and then we dropped the lobster head first into boiling water for 11 minutes. The critical part of boiling shellfish is once it's boiled to drop it into a sink of iced water to chill it as fast as you can, and then you end up with a fantastic cooked lobster. We're going to show you how to prepare it, remembering this is a ready to eat product, so the customer is actually going to eat the product and not cook it, so we have to make sure we've got clean equipment and clean hands. The first thing we're going to do is remove the claws from the lobster. The way we do that is hold the lobster upright and pull both claws backwards, and the joins will break quite easily, and we just move those to one side. We're then also going to remove the mandible, because on the back of the mandible there are some sinews, and we take both the mandibles and very gently roll our hands back, and the sinews will come out of the inside of the lobster attached, and that part is waste. We're now going to split the lobster, and to do that we lie the lobster flat on the work surface with the tail facing our cutting hand. Then we're going to take a large staking knife. The line that is along the whole length of the thorax should be used as a guide to insert your knife. Push the knife hard down through the shell. Make sure that the tip has contact with the work surface. Then we're going to hold the thorax of the lobster on either side and start to work the knife down the length of the tail, making sure we're keeping contact with the work surface at all times, and it should cut straight through the tail. We're then going to turn the lobster round, and we're going to cut the thorax in half. So we insert the knife in the initial cut, hold the thorax together with our thumb and index finger, and then cut the lobster straight in half. You can then lie the lobster open and see the beautiful flesh. This lobster is perfectly cooked, there's no shrinkage, and it's ivory white. The brown greeny meat is actually called tamale and is edible. The bits that we have to remove are firstly the sandbox, half is in there and half is in there. And with my oyster knife I'm actually going to go underneath the sandbox and just lift it out, and that is waste. Repeat the exercise on the second half, just lift the sandbox, lift it out, and that is waste. We then need to remove the vein from the lobster, and we're going to do that. You look for the vein down one half of the lobster. We can see the tip of the vein there. I'm going to use my oyster knife to go under the vein, take hold of it in your thumb and your fingers, and then very gently just lift it up, and all of the vein will lift out in one piece, and of course that's waste as well. Just going to tidy my work surface slightly. And there's two beautiful halves of lobster. We're now going to work on the claws, both claws. Firstly we need to remove the elastic band, and actually be careful even lifting the band off the claws, which are there to stop it biting you when it's live. These can fly off the claws if you're not careful. Just make sure you grip onto them when you remove them. We're now going to separate the thigh, the knee and the claw, and we do that by holding the claw and bending it backwards to break it in half, and we do that with both claws. Now we're going to remove the large sinew that's inside the claw before we actually crack it. The way we do that is we take the small pincer, lift it and then roll it backwards very gently and slowly, and all of the sinew will come out of the centre of the claw. We're then going to do the same exercise with the crushing claw. Take the small pincer, roll it back, and the sinew will come right out the middle of the flesh. The reason we remove it is it does go brittle and can be very sharp when you eat your lobster. The first thing I'm going to do now is inside the small pincers we remove the sinew. There is a tiny little bit of flesh, but because of a lobster's value it's worth removing as much as possible, so we actually pull the pincers out of the little claw and place the meat inside the lobster. We're going to repeat the exercise with the second pincer, getting as high a yield as possible, and of course I'll place this meat in the second half of the lobster. Now we're going to crack the claws. To do this we need to use a large staking knife. We're going to take the claw, we're going to stand it on its bottom side. Make sure that you hold the pincer at the very end. We're actually going to strike the claw there, so we need to make sure the base of the claw is touching the work surface underneath where I'm going to strike it. With the hilt of the knife, just mark your hit, take the claw in, turn it swiftly and crack it, gently lift the shell away, and the claw will come out of its shell in one piece. Remembering there's no sinew in there, so it's perfect to put straight on the half lobster as it is. Repeat the exercise on the second claw. We're going to strike the claw there, make sure the base of the claw is on the work surface, hilt of the knife, tap it in. If you miss, just go in the second time, quick twist, you'll hear the shell crack, gently lift the shell away, and then the whole claw again will lift out the centre of the shell. Beautiful. Turn it over and show you the other side. We're building the presentation as we go. We're now going to show you how to remove the meat out the knee and the thigh. You very gently separate them with your hands. Be careful of the sharp spikes. If you want to use a cloth, that's not a problem. And again, we're going to use the oyster knife. We're going to get inside the large holes. We're just going to work that lovely chunk of meat out of each thigh. Put one on either side, and then we're going to work the lovely chunk of meat outside the inside of the knee. And you just work away inside, try and pull it out in one nice large piece. And finally, the last knee. Just work your way with the tip of the blade around the chunk of meat, and that's all the meat out of the lobster. We are going to show you one little trick to help presentation and eating, and that is to actually lift the tails, cut them and replace them back in the lobster. This is quite an easy exercise. We're going to take the tail out of the shell, you lift the tail end, and then you very gently just work the tail out of the meat itself. Lift the tail on the second half, again lifting gently, make sure the tail stays whole. Now I'm going to turn them over, and I'm actually going to slice the lobster tail with my knife at an angle, making it very easy to eat. Then we reconstruct the tail and we place it back in the opposite half of the lobster. Replace the claw back on top and just insert it into the tail, and that makes it far easier to eat for the consumer. Going to repeat the exercise on the second half. Just gently cut through the tail with the blade of the knife on an angle, rebuild the tail into its shape, and then we're going to insert this into the opposite side of the shell with the red meat facing up, and there we have two halves of lobster beautifully prepared. Just wipe down.